Hello, my friends. Today we're talking about the 3 ways that we deal with or manage painful emotions, difficult feelings when they arise. Only one of which really works in your favor in the long term, supporting your well-being and your happiness. So very briefly, the first one is that we repress these difficult emotional experiences. The second is that we act them out. They come out sideways by, yelling at someone or our rage, or we're acting out in different ways. And the middle way, the third way, is to feel and embody the emotions. And the first two, as we'll see, they just sweep the problem under the rug in various ways. So they actually compound the difficulty and make you more emotionally reactive and actually contribute to more suffering over the long term. Whereas it's only the middle way that actually is a way that sort of deals with the problem directly. I say the problem, helps you integrate the emotions, and so that you actually become a bit more calmer, stable, more capacity for emotions over the longer term. So let's explore this a little bit. The first one, repression. These painful emotions arise, and the nervous system naturally is averse to these painful, difficult experiences. And they're painful because they're trying to motivate you in a certain way. And you're kind of in a battle for yourself here. It's like you're in a threatening situation. Your body creates fear to motivate you to get out of that situation. But your body's also simultaneously resisting the fear just because it's painful. Or it could be that the fear is overwhelming. It's just too much for the nervous system. So it might have to repress it to not, frazzle your circuits. Or often we're conditioned, we're taught through our experiences in life that, certain emotions are not acceptable. They're not allowed. So maybe, you cried when you were small at school and you got bullied and it's hard. It's so painful. You feel rejected. So you quickly learn that emotion's unsafe. It's a threat. These are some of the reasons why we repress emotions, which we do in 100 different ways. The body might tense. That's kind of the classic, that we just go tense. You ever noticed when you're really angry with someone and you just feel your body is so tense? It's holding in that anger. Or we might shut down. We might, not speak as much or go silent and just feel ourselves. You can always feel your mind go quiet and eerily silent. Doesn't feel good in the body, or the body freezes, you can go numb. Maybe there's lots of cognitive ways we can repress emotions by simply distracting ourselves. You go on your phone, you go have a drink, you play some computer games, or you might come with all kinds of rationalizations for why these emotions that you're experiencing shouldn't be here. It could be like, maybe you feel anger and it's like, I'm not an angry person. I want to be really compassionate to these people. So I'm not going to, this anger shouldn't be here. Or it could be you have a particular worldview. I'm just a very spiritual, it's not spiritual to feel anger. Or maybe there's a sense of resignation. There's just no point. There's no point. What's that going to do? No point sitting around crying or being angry, These are all kind of ways we repress our emotions, and there's many, many more. I've got I've got videos on resistance to emotions and repression. If you search for those terms, that you can see. The issue with this is that these emotions don't just disappear. When you repress them, they're trying to come up to tell you something. You're pushing them back down, and they remain sort of looping in your unconscious. And as you repress them again and again, it sort of starts to snowball and it gets bigger and bigger each time. That's why sometimes when you get triggered, the emotion that comes up seems so massive. You get so enraged by something small. It's because it's that whole snowball's coming to the surface. And the real issue here is that, you're building this snowball of emotion, which just creates more pain and suffering in the long term. It just makes you so sensitive to that snowball being triggered up. And it also just cuts you off from yourself. It cuts you off from your truth, the truth of your emotions. And your emotions are so key. When you're able to embody your emotions and actually allow them, that improves your cognitive performance. It improves your decision making. Your behaviors are more regulated. They make more sense. You have more sort of willpower. All these things. So, and in a fundamental way, when you repress, you're just cut off from your truth, from yourself. You have to, and when you repress your negative emotions, you even repress your positive emotions, right? Your joy, your happiness, all kinds of reasons why this creates issues. Not least, there's one more to mention that, if you imagine your sort of repressed emotions inside are it's like a bucket. As that bucket fills up, at certain thresholds, you start to get symptoms, like physical symptoms or cognitive symptoms, as there are ways of trying to cope with it. So you might get headaches, or you might get a skin rash, or you get sort of obsessive thoughts or intrusive thoughts, or you get some autoimmune condition. These are ways, I'm not saying these are all necessarily to do with emotions, but very often these are ways that the body tries to cope. So that's repression. The other way is that we tend to act out our emotions. It's like they spill over the top rather than pushing them down into that bucket. The bucket is spilling everywhere. So that might be someone who who's really irritable, for example, who's constantly yelling or trying to control the situation, or getting angry at people. Or it might be someone who feels like they're very, very often on the verge of tears. They're crying a lot. Their life tends to be quite dramatic as a result. It's sort of you can just feel the sadness and melancholy sort of spilling out into their lives. And again, they're not resolving anything in doing this. There's nothing wrong with it per se. I'm not suggesting these people are doing anything bad or wrong. They're not. They're in a difficult spot and they're suffering. But they're dealing with it in a way that is not going to help them out in the long term, because when that emotion's spilling out everywhere, it's not getting resolved. It's not really being met or contained or felt. They're not helping themselves to feel safe with that. It's just looping. And so you'll notice that people who are irritable or who are, have these dramatic lives, there's a lot of tears and wailing and gnashing of teeth. It just goes on and on and on. It just repeats itself, right? The same pattern, the same behaviors. It's because in that state, you're not present with it. You're just in your head. You're in your head thinking about how outrageous, those people, who have made you angry are, or those people who have upset you, how it's all their fault, or whatever it is. Which is just it's a way of trying to cope. It's innocent. It's trying to cope with the emotions. They're in a lot of pain. These emotions are painful. And to them in that moment, it just feels easier to let it spew everywhere and to put the attention outside on other people and things. But again, it doesn't resolve anything, and it will just keep going and going and going. The middle way is learning to feel and embody the emotions, where we're not repressing them, but we're not acting them out either. They're just allowed to be present in the system. That word allowing is key. It's really about allowing without too much of a reaction to that, to that particular emotion. And this, you can think of it in a sense of love. It's really just holding that emotion just as it is, letting it be just as it is, without needing to change it or change other people so you don't have to feel that way, or whatever it might be. How do you do that? There's a few ideas here. I've also got a blog and a video called How to Feel Your Feelings, which you could look up, which would also goes into a lot more detail on this. But the key is that you want to be present with the emotion in the body. So the repression and the acting out, they're very much in the head, actually. Your attention's always in the head, even when there can be a lot of emotional stuff going on. Whereas in the middle way, you want to drop into the body and actually put your attention where you're feeling that emotion. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to know exactly what it is. It doesn't have to be too detailed. A trick is you can just stay with the part that feels bad. Just notice how bad it feels, because that's really what the emotion is. The emotion is the bit that just you're not wanting to look at because it just feels so unpleasant. You don't have to worry too much about body sensations like your heart rate going quickly or your breath. Or tension in the body. Stay with that bit that feels bad, because that's the part you're avoiding and that we need to go towards. As an aside here, you might want to resource yourself. That means just support yourself to be present. It can be quite intense. And so you can just place a hand where you're feeling that, where it feels unpleasant. Or you can imagine there's someone supportive with you. Or you can, do a bit of breath work. Just sighing, just gently blowing out some of the excess emotion, maybe a little bit. I've got a video on resourcing as well, which will support with that. That helps you to be present with the emotion without it getting too dysregulating. If it gets a bit much, again, you're going to want to do something resourcing or take a step back. Now, here's another critical part of really allowing the emotion is to let it be heard. but in its truth, but without acting it out. So say you've got anger. I'm using this example quite a lot because it's quite clear with anger. You don't want to, that anger might be wanting to say like, no, like go away, fuck off. But you don't actually say that to the person. You just want to let the energy of that be heard. So you can maybe say it out loud, or you can imagine saying it in your head. It's like, no, 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 no. And you're just really honoring the truth of this part of you. It doesn't have to make sense, doesn't have to be nice, just whatever it's saying. If it wants to say, oh, you're the worst person in the world, that's not true, but you have to let it be heard. Just like with a little toddler who just wants to say to its mum, oh, mum, I hate you, you're the worst mum in the world. It doesn't really think that, but it's a suffering, and it's being taken in an extreme position. And for these emotions, we need to hear that too and give it space for that. Sounds can be helpful as well here to actually help express an emotion. Just like just really letting the truth of that come forward. You can also let it express and move. Maybe if it's angry, you can press against a wall and let some of that anger come through. If it's afraid, maybe it wants to, the hands want to shake a little bit. This is all to do with, again, just letting these parts of you be as they are. Right, that's kind of the key. This is the middle way. I think that covers most of those points. Yeah, it's about allowing it to be as it is, keeping your attention with it, honoring the truth of what it wants to say and how it wants to move, and allowing that as best as you're able. And in that, you'll notice it feels very different to repressing it or acting it out. And actually, very often, although it's painful or challenging, it can feel really good. It feels like a relief, or it feels like you're in the right place. It feels like for me, it always feels like I'm like cleaning out an old cupboard or something. It's like a relief of this old emotion finally allowing to be honored. And at the end, you just want to give it some space, just to notice how you feel now. Maybe you've felt a little bit of that anger or that sadness, and you might notice you can breathe a little bit more easily. There's a bit more space in your body. To spend some time with that, just to notice that improvement. Let's go for some examples of how you might do this then. Say there's frustration at a partner. Your partner, lied to you in some way. And you're feeling really angry at them. You could repress it by just going, oh, they didn't mean it. Coming up with some rationalization that sounds very reasonable. But actually, you're still really annoyed. Or you could act out, you could scream and yell at them and threaten to break up. But that might not help either of you much either. You're going to get the best results. Again, why you'd want to do any of this is because if you can embody and allow this anger, it'll subside, it'll relax, you'll integrate it. And then you're much calmer in the space afterwards to actually make a decision that's appropriate, to actually talk to this person. Because when you're triggered and angry, that's no time to be talking to someone and to have an important discussion. And so this middle way, it makes it much easier, you're able to think much more clearly and behave and act much more clearly, because you haven't got these emotions distorting your view. Because even the repressed emotions, the one you're acting out, they're still distorting your view. So yeah, you don't want to do either of those. So what you do is you maybe notice that frustration in the chest. So you might put a hand there to support it. And you might want to allow it to expand. Expanding emotion in the body, it makes it more tolerable to be with. So you could let that expand, that frustration expand. And maybe you notice that you want to, it wants to, like, you're so annoyed, you just want to break things. And you can just let in your mind, imagine that you're just breaking things in your mind, and just imagine you've got a baseball bat in your living room. Not actually in your living room, just in your mind. And just maybe making a few sounds like "Arr, arr, arr, arr." So you're expanding that as you're holding it. You're letting your imagination, in your imagination, you're smashing things with your baseball bat and making those sounds. And you'll find that something like that really helps you to get into that frustration, and actually makes it, it will start to help it dissipate over the course of a few minutes. In some cases, there could be complications. It might feel a bit unsafe to feel the anger and so on. Again, that's a little beyond the scope of this video, but other videos address that. then that anger would subside. You could able have a bit more space to have a more, open conversation with your partner, whatever that might look like. Say you feel ashamed because you made a mistake, right? You made a mistake at work, and maybe it affected some other people and they're not happy, and so you feel kind of shame. Say that's in the belly. You can just kind of feel there's this tightness in the belly. Again, the tightness itself is not the emotion, so you might want to just notice, okay, well, where do I feel the actual shame? Where does it just feel really unpleasant? It might be deeper in the belly. You notice it's that like, oh God, the real, yuck kind of feeling. So again, rather than repressing that and coming up with, well, screw, you could distract yourself and go to the pub, or like vent to a friend, or acting out, which could be, blaming those people. Well, they don't know what they're talking about anyway. You might lash out at them as a way of coping. Instead, see if you can move towards that part that feels bad. It's like, oh, the yuck. Maybe you just make the sounds like, like you can't see, I've got a hand there as well, a hand to support. Maybe that you feel like your body wants to like hide from itself. It's like, And just staying present, again, attention more in the body with that unpleasantness and the hiding. And again, by embodying these emotions, it helps, and you can expand it as well. Imagine it expanding maybe upwards into more the chest or down to the legs. You make it more tolerable. It starts to integrate and relax. You have more space. And after you've been with that for a few minutes, you might just notice that, okay, there's a tiny bit more space here, and just start noticing that bit more space. And then again, from there, you'll just get some relief, and then you'll be able to, maybe resolve your error, your mistake that you made a little bit more effectively than otherwise would have been the case. Last little example here: fear of being seen and judged. And you get the idea at this point. You could repress that fear. Say you're going to be, you want to play some music at a friend's party, and you're afraid of being seen. You could repress that fear by avoiding just ringing up and going, I'm not afraid, but I just don't, I don't really fancy it. Actually, I've been pretty sick recently. It's a bit much, and you kind of just pretend you're not afraid and come up with some reason. Or you could act it out. You could get really drunk before the party. I don't know. These are probably quite autobiographical examples I'm giving here. I don't think I've done exactly that, but that's I don't know. I like playing music. I used to drink a lot as a way of coping. So it's probably why these examples are coming forward. The middle way would be to just acknowledge, okay, I'm afraid. Again, notice maybe it's in the shoulders, and it's, you can imagine people judging you. You can feel that shame, and just, I can feel it now even, just going into it, and you just put your attention with that, it feels bad, and then just vocalize, expressing it like, no, help it expand. Just allowing the truth of this fear to be expressed and felt. And then again, who knows what will happen, but you'll have a slightly better outcome, whatever it is, than if you just sort of repress the fear. So I hope that helps. If you want some support, feeling your feelings, getting to know your mind, your body better, connecting to your body, working through your psychological defenses and resistances, or any of that kind of stuff, I do work with people one-on-one, so you can check out those details below. And peace out.